let's just start from the beginning. Why don't you tell me a little about yourself and your long career in music?
Okay, well, my dad started teaching me to read music when I was 4. My parents are both from Italy. My mom was an interpreter in World War II, so she spoke English. My dad did not. So she would teach me to read words, and he would teach me to read music. And as is the tradition at that time in Italy, when I was 6, I chose my instrument, and to everybody's surprise, I chose guitar, because guitar was nothing at that time. It was just starting to get a little bit of traction. But as we all know, just a couple of years later, it became the main instrument, once we got into the 60s. And I was on TV locally in Cleveland fairly regularly on a Sunday morning TV show. And by the time I was 13, I was starting to do studio work. And I did studio work from about 64 to when I left Cleveland in 75 to take the job here at Boise State in the music department as guitar teacher and music history.
What
My
was
specialty. Yeah.
what was the guitar teacher role like back then in the '70s? Was it primarily classical guitar, or was there any contemporary
Strictly
music?
classical guitar.
Yeah.
They had another guitar teacher that, well, let's put it this way. My first two guitar teachers, my first guitar teacher was Jimmy Hall, who was a great jazz guitarist who just passed away just a few months ago. And shortly thereafter, he left to find fortune and fame. And I had another guitar teacher who was primarily a jazz guitar player, but also with the Cleveland Orchestra would play when they needed a mandolin player. He played mandolin. So for the first, my electric guitar playing was from the beginning just about strictly jazz. And when we got into the 60s, rock was becoming more popular, and a lot of the older jazz guys wouldn't play studio rock. And so they would call me because I read really, really well. And I was familiar with the styles, although I still considered myself a jazzer until about 1966. And when I was about 15. And then I just started to see the worth in just about all kinds of music. And a couple of years earlier than that, I got a full ride scholarship to the Cleveland Institute of Music to study classical guitar, and just fell in love with that, and really kind of dedicated my practice time to classical guitar.
So how did you get into the more progressive styles of music?
Well, I really, really started to identify with rock music, but wanted something that was smarter, something that was more challenging. I don't dance, never cared to dance, which is part of the reason why I became a musician. I figured I could be playing music and let them do the dancing. And it was more fun playing music anyway. So, and dance music, you can go back as far as you want, and dance music tends to be and I'm not slamming it at all, but it tends to be the more simple type of music. And I wanted something that appealed more to the brain and things that were more interesting, fresh to the ear. So when we hit the latter half of the 60s, you start to see the New York Rock and Roll Ensemble and the Moody Blues with the Mellotron and doing longer arrangements of things, and then the Left Bank that combined Baroque styles and instrumentation with a rock framework. And then, of course, at the very end of the '60s, King Crimson, the Who doing mini operas and then rock operas. The Paul Winter Consort. They were a good early interest of mine. That combined kind of folk music, jazz, and classical with a really odd instrumentation.
So did you go to the record store in Boise and find these records, or how did you hear about these bands?
This was long before that. I didn't move to Boise until '75.
Oh, okay.
And I was 24 at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and had already finished my master's. So, I used to go downtown Cleveland and go to Record Rendezvous, which was a huge, not huge by today's standards, but it was a huge store that carried just about everything there ever was. And I was able to pick up, the Paul Winter Consort albums and the Who albums and King Crimson albums and Utopia and stuff like that weren't in the top 40 list necessarily. Of course, some of those got in there, and then of course there's some of the crossover groups like Yes in Kansas, and groups that did basically pop songs that are accessible, but with more involved arrangements and using more modern compositional techniques. And that's kind of what I tried to do with the Path. I love King Crimson. I might be getting off the subject here, but I love King Crimson. I really think that they're, for what I've heard, they're about as out there as you can get. Their compositional techniques are insane. They have everything. In baseball, you've got the 5 tools, and I think in music, Gentle Giant more than any other group had everything. I mean, they had the vocals, they had the arrangements, they had the compositional techniques, they had solid songs, they had lyrics, subject matter that was varied and at the same time relevant. So I thought they had all the tools where some groups, I guess, were trying to appeal. I don't think King Crimson, I don't think Gentle Giant was trying to appeal to anything but themselves. And if you happened to be a fan, you were a rabid fan, and if you weren't a fan, you didn't like them. That's all there is to it. You just didn't get it. But I'm a bit more tonal than that, and I do appreciate having a more accessible song. Although I'm not sure how much that's on the CD The Path is into this category, but something that could be a 3-minute song, but is 7 minutes instead.
Like "Will You Love Me Tomorrow"?
Yeah, well, that's obviously a tip of the hat to Vanilla Fudge. When I first heard Vanilla Fudge, I mean, they just tore my head off, and I realized these guys are doing covers. And I've got a story about writing your own stuff and doing covers that goes back to my early studio work days. I'm not sure if you want to hear that one or not, but I was probably 15. And there was a studio drummer that was probably in his 50s at the time that I had seen down there quite a bit. And we were doing a session for a regional group. They were cutting some tracks, and I was called in to play lead guitar. And they had lost their drummer, so they got this guy to play drums for them. And they were doing original material, and I was thinking, maybe I should start thinking about writing some stuff. And he said, what we do is way harder than writing your own stuff. He said, what we do is like we walk into a studio and they put music in front of us, or they tell us what they want. The producer tells us what he wants, and it's kind of like following Babe Ruth up to bat. Not only are they asking us to hit a home run, it's like Babe Ruth steps up to the plate and he hits a home run to section 202, row 12, seat 15.
Right.
And not only are they asking us to come in and play a solo like Eric Clapton would do, or like Segovia would do, or like Johnny Smith would do, but we've got to hit it to the same row, the same section, and the same seat. And the better you do that, the more in demand you're going to be as a studio musician. And that really affected, the first 90% of my life. I always thought it was, first of all, you're appealing to an audience usually, and I really didn't have much interest in writing my own stuff until just a few years ago. I've got a neurological disorder, and I wasn't able to play for a while, and so I wasn't able to drive and so on and so forth. So I was basically stuck, with no creative outlook at all. And that's when I started writing. I started getting creative along those lines.
Using
that's
the
about
computer?
all I could do. I basically come up with the ideas. Quite often it's the lyrics first. And I write the poem, or at least a framework of it. And usually there's a line or a couple of lines that the melody and whatever the accompaniment might be kind of comes with it. And then I just expand it from there and turn it into, over a period of time, an arrangement.
When you had gotten to Boise, it was because of the job, and were you continuing to do studio work at that time as well?
Well, there isn't much of a studio. There's not many opportunities for studio work in Boise.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, even now, it's a little bit better now, but when I got here, there were only 33,000 people here, and it's kind of a backwater place. I mean, the only claim to fame was that Paul Revere and the Raiders came from here. That's about it. But now there's 250,000, and so there are more studios, and I've known a few more people, and I do get the occasional studio gig. But mainly what I was doing was gigging, mostly in jazz and rock at that, in the 70s, and doing fill-ins. I belong to the union, and there's no union here anymore, but in the late 70s and first couple of years of the 80s, there was a union, and groups would come through town, and since I play a lot of instruments pretty well, and kept familiar with what was going on, quite often I would get hired to play bass or guitar or drums, or sometimes even other instruments, with traveling groups that had a squabble with one of their members, or one of the members got sick, or something like that, and I'd fill in. And some things like shows, like Broadway-like shows, or circus-type things, or horse shows, or whatever. We need a live band. So I do gigging, including playing clubs, and do my job at the university, and do classical gigs. And I probably do an average of 3 classical gigs a month. Sometimes way more than that, sometimes less. But I do that as well. after a few years, I got my doctorate. When I got back, I went on leave for a year and got my doctorate in classical guitar performance, and also continued my study with medieval music. And when I got back, I started a medieval ensemble at the university, and that group played around quite a bit. And then I had a professional medieval group that traveled to Europe twice and did concerts around the United States. Just kind of on an excursion basis. You go out to Richmond, Virginia, or you go to San Diego, or you go to Texas or whatever, and then come back. But we did have two summer tours in Europe, one in '90 and one in '94, doing medieval music.
So as a guitar professor at Boise State, where you've been for how many years now?
Well, I started in '75, and I officially retired in 2009. But I stayed on for 2 more years until the last of my students had finished their program. So I was an adjunct for the last 2 years. All told, it was 36 years.
So was your electric guitar playing ever of interest to your students or the faculty in your department?
No.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they did have for a while they had a jazz program going, and I taught bass, electric bass. The other guitar teacher absolutely loved jazz guitar, and that was really his first. He played classical, but his first love was jazz guitar. So we kind of decided that both of us would do classical guitar students. He would do jazz guitar, and I would do jazz bass. So we split the duties up along those lines, and I was perfectly happy not to be doing electric guitar at the university level. I had some students at home, that I taught electric guitar, but I really preferred to teach classical. I enjoyed that quite a bit more. Now I only have one student. That's my grandson.
Oh.
He's becoming quite the player himself.
So tell me about the path. It sounds like it started after you came down with some illness, and you based on the liner notes, I think it sounded like you already had a band and had a couple songs together, but then due to the health issues, you had to stop performing.
Well, the Subtle Force is really another band that plays classic rock, but it just happens that that's just the identity of the band. So in order to when I came up with the idea of doing the CD, we basically had a repertoire, and there weren't that many gigs. We play maybe 20 gigs a year, and that's what includes like a classic rock cruise or warming up for a classic rock act or something like that. But we really didn't need to rehearse every week or twice a week to prepare for that. I mean, we've been together, the 6 of us, for quite a while, and we knew each other pretty well. We knew the repertoire. When something was coming up, we brushed up on a few tunes. But we really didn't need all that time, but we wanted to keep playing together. So I presented to them that I had this idea for a progressive rock CD, and everybody in the group said, yeah, that sounded like a great idea. So I started writing material in earnest at that time. We changed the name from what everybody knows us as. I'm not sure if I want to mention what that is, but we're kind of a regionally known classic rock band, and we changed the name so our fans wouldn't get confused. Expect to hear what Beatles and Kinks and James Brown and whatnot, and then they wind up hearing all original progressive material in it that wouldn't go over very well. So we changed the name of the group, and we got a show together that was about an hour and 15 minutes long, with the in between song stuff. About half of it was original material, and half of it was progressive cover material. And then we started getting gigs, and we have another fellow who got ill in the band, and we had to slow down some. So we got 3 of the songs recorded, and then the project kind of dissipated. So I finished the other 6 tracks by myself, with the help of a couple of other people.
So did you record these tracks in a studio or at home?
Yeah, they were done in the studio.
Mm. Is it all recorded to analog? It had a very aged sound.
Well, the engineer Don Cunningham is really familiar with, he's really intuitive with what kind of timbre I wanted to get, and he understood that right away. So the way that he recorded it, I used real instruments. There's very little electronic on there. Very, very little digital in the instruments. I mean, the percussion instruments are almost 100% real instruments. The bass, except for the very end of Blind Eyes Closed, is an electric bass. Of course, the guitars, the horns, the flute, those are all real instruments. So there's very little in the way of synthesized or computer produced sound in there. So there's that, and then plus he's just really good with knowing what kind of mic to use and how to enhance it to make it sound more analog.
Did he record it into a digital audio workstation?
Yeah.
And then
it went directly into digital.
Okay.
The band would have been able to do it analog, but I never would have been able to do the project because it's just too complicated
and expensive
by myself. By what?
And it's expensive to record analog now.
Oh yeah, it would have been ridiculous. And then, like I said, I do have a neurological disorder, and I have good days and I have bad days. Although lately I've been feeling much better. Maybe by some happenstance I'm going into remission or something. But there were days when I didn't feel like I could play. There were days when I didn't feel like I could sing. So being able to redo quickly or patch in without the complexities of working with tape and the problems of working with tape really made it worthwhile. And my son is a recording engineer, and he is very old-fashioned. I mean, he records on tape, and that's it. And I would have loved to do the project in his studio, but it just wasn't reasonable to do it that way.
So the path is it harkens back to the Gentle Giant style, where they mix medieval music with 70s rock and a couple of other genres. What inspires you about that genre, or a mixing of genres, or that era of music, or Gentle Giant in particular?
Yeah, I think the Winter Consort had a lot to do with that too. Being able to successfully mix different styles, and quite frankly, I identify myself as a purist. I like real medieval music done on the proper instruments done in the proper style with the proper ornaments and so on and so forth. And when I do a cover, I want it to sound as close to the popular recording as at all possible. And really, the path is a departure from that, where I'm combining a lot of the things that I enjoy that seem to go together well. So this is kind of an oddity for me to be combining different styles like that. But I used in at least 3 different situations the Baroque basso continuo style, where you have a bass line and a melody, and then filled-in chords, improvised chords in the middle. And then I change. This is most noticeable in Blind Eyes Closed, where there's a bass line every time the vocal comes in. The bass line is the same, but the first time it's played with just an electric bass, and really nothing or almost nothing over the top of that except for the melody. And at another point, it's harpsichord and viola da gamba playing the bass line. One time with flute, one other time without, and with organ with it.
Your father was a luthier, if I recall, on your website, and he built.
Yeah, he was. He had many things that he did. He was trained as a woodworker and a flute player when he was a kid. Joined the Air Force in Italy when he was 17. Became a test pilot at the beginning of World War II. And then when he married my mom, he moved to the United States and became a woodworker and a carpenter. And he had to retire early due to an accident at the job. And that's when he started building instruments. And he built instruments for the last 29 years of his life.
And he built you several of the medieval instruments.
Yeah, medieval, Baroque, Renaissance, and some straight classical guitars, and some real weird things too. Well, a lot of the medieval instruments are weird, but mostly string instruments.
And those instruments, do they appear on this record, or did you have?
Yes, the Symphonia is one. It's kind of a small hurdy-gurdy type instrument from the 12th century, and the medieval lute, which is most people think of lute as an instrument you pluck with your fingers, but the medieval lute was played with a plectrum, usually a quill or a horn shard, and that appears on let's see, Fortuna Disperata and Saltarello. So yeah, those appear there, and I use a hand drum that he built on one of those as well.
So tell me about your compositional approach. Do you start on the guitar or on another instrument in a sequencer on a keyboard?
No, never use a sequencer. Hardly ever use a keyboard. Usually it starts in my head, and like I said before, it usually starts. First of all, I want to write about something that's important to me. So that's the cornerstone. Writing yummy, I got love in my tummy doesn't interest me. In fact, I've had several local guys hear my stuff and they go, "Wow, that's a really great tune, but you got to dumb it down." So I have no interest in dumbing it down or writing another teenage angst love song or something like that. I just don't have any interest in that.
So once you get the idea in your head, what happens with it? Do you write it out on paper, or?
Yeah, I write the lyrics out, or at least part of the lyrics, either on paper or more likely, I just get to the word processor and put it into form on the word processor, and then I kind of sing it to myself, and that becomes the seed for the melody. And then it just expands from there. And then I have a music writing program, and I get the electronic staff paper out. No, I use Sibelius. Yeah, when I was doing the work at the university, Sibelius was a lot easier to write songs, because you could set the lyrics easier than on Finale. Finale is more of an orchestral kind of thing, and Sibelius, you could write several different types of tablature, lute tablature, guitar tablature, viola tablature. You can write in chant notation, the square Gregorian notation. You can write without meters. Finale does not like that. Finale does not like to write without meters. It insists that you have a meter. And Sibelius just allows you more freedom. It doesn't work really well if you want a huge score. At least I don't think so. But it's much more conducive to what I do, the early music stuff. And it allows you to it just allows more freedom in the areas that I need. So usually I have the lyrics, or at least part of the lyrics first, and then out of a line or two there is a melody that seems to be married to it, and then I just expand it from there.
Does the melody come from the words?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It does. It's rare when I come up with something on an instrument. It usually happens in my head, or I'll hear a phrase, or I'll hear a melody, or less often I'll hear a chord progression, and I go, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Now, if they had done this, it would be, I'd like that even better. So then I just start heading down that road and expanding until it's done.
And how do you come up with arrangements for instrumentation? What songs are going to mix the medieval? What songs are going to be, more straightforward rock instrumentation?
It just seems to happen. I think it was Charles Ives that said that all music lives out in the cosmos, and we as musicians are receptors. It just so happens that you're standing in the right place, and that that piece of music just comes to you. And that's kind of the way a lot of it is.
So personal and intuitive.
Yeah. Or there'll be I'll set some parameters. Like, again, in Blind Eyes Closed, I wanted to write something really dark. So I thought I'd use something fairly chromatic, both in the melody and in the bass line. And if you listen to it, the melodic line goes up chromatically, and the bass line goes down. So that became the tune, and then I wanted to set it up with something that is intriguing and exciting, but dark at the beginning as well. So that instrumental introduction at the beginning with the rhythmic thing on the low E, the changing modal chords underneath it.
Do you seek out weird music for your recreational listening? And what do you enjoy about progressive and less commercial music?
Well, I like to be challenged. What I used to say to my students is that, when you were 3, Mary Had a Little Lamb and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star was interesting. And then as you get older, you kind of grow out of that, and you continue to grow, and become older, and you want more of a challenge than that. Well, people who are musicians if they continue to listen to things that are farther out and farther out, you want that challenge. You want to have something that's fresh, that's not, three chords and isn't oh, my baby left me, kind of stuff. So yeah, I do tend to listen on the radio for stuff that is fresh. A lot of guys my age are content to leave the dial on jazz or leave it on the oldie station and hear Beach Boys tunes all day, and that's fine. I like that too. But when I heard and this is a pop tune, but I think it was really interesting anyway, was Madness by Muse just a year ago or so. That sound that they were getting and the sparsity of the instrumentation and just the quality of the arrangement is just, I really found intriguing. Same thing with Pompeii by Bastille. They really got a fresh sound, even though it's a pop tune. They got a fresh sound. So I do tend to. There's a community radio station here that plays pretty out there stuff. Sometimes, sometimes you'll hear Rolling Stones tune. Sometimes you'll hear Dave Brubeck, but a lot of it is either unknown or almost unknown to me. And I'm, granted, maybe one song out of 20 will grab me, but waiting for that one song is worth it because I hear something that's challenging. If everybody drove Ford Focuses, that would be wonderful. It is I think it's still the most popular car everywhere, but that car doesn't make it for Indy drivers. It doesn't make it for motocross, not motocross, but road, European road racers. They have to have something special that only a tiny percentage of the drivers in the world would appreciate. And I like to go for that. I like to go for that uniqueness.
So your metaphors can be dangerous, and they can also be very successful. But
yeah, and you have to realize, and I do realize that it's that album. Let's suppose some miracle happened and some major label heard it and said, "Yeah, we want to sell it." I don't think it's ever going to be in the top 40 because Gentle Giant was at it for 11 years, and I don't think they ever got anything in the top 100.
No, they did get some great touring opportunities, but that's probably as far as it went.
Yeah, no doubt. But even Genesis had the early in the Peter Gabriel days had the distinction of being the only act to not sell out night after night after night after night and never have a hit.
So I wanted to explore your metaphor a little bit. Would you say that, like the people who do European racing require a special car, while most other people could drive a Ford Focus, would you say that the kind of music that you write or are interested in requires an investment in music, or would it be appealing to anybody if they gave it more than a casual listen?
I think it could happen both ways. I think that if someone was given So Sincere by Gentle Giant to listen to, that was a big fan of Elvis Presley and Dion or something like that, I don't think in general, that casual of a listener, even a musician, would know quite what to make of it, because it's there's 12-tone stuff in there. There's a lot of uncatchy stuff in the traditional sense in there. But I think the songs, by and large, on the path are accessible. And the interesting stuff either happens in the background or it happens between the verses. So, and one kind of sets up the other, or reflects on the other. So I think having an education in music, being schooled in music, is one big help. But I think, I know that I have several people who have bought the CD and say, I didn't care for this one, I didn't care for this one, but wow, I really got that one. That one really made sense. And it would surprise me, which one they would like and which one they wouldn't like.
So, do you feel that weird music makes a difference in the world? Does it change anything for anyone?
Well, it's obviously, at least from my perspective, what I know about the market today, it's not getting to many people because the radio waves are so dictated from above. We don't want anything but platinum sellers or stuff that will go platinum. So let's make Batman 17 instead of trying a different character or trying a different storyline or something like that. We want to do things that are safe because we're going to put a lot of money on this and we want to make a lot of money. Whereas I think in the late 60s and in the early half of the 70s, that it was a much more experimental time, and college stations were more apt to play it, and college students and high school students were more apt to listen, and therefore they had a wider array of things to listen to, stuff that's constructed for more than a 30-second attention span. So I don't think it has the impact that it did on the whole, but I still think that there are several people out there like myself, like a few people here in Boise. There's another progressive band. A couple of them are pretty good friends of mine. Although their music is very different from what's on the path. It's much more like I'm trying to remember the name of the group that they're close to. Dream Theater. They're much more like Dream Theater. If there are 8 tracks on their CD, probably 6 of them are going to be totally instrumental, and a lot of intricate stuff where the keyboard, the guitar, and the bass are all playing the same thing. It's very, very interwoven and very tough to figure out. But still, I think it all falls in the same thing, in the same general category, because the whole nature of weird music or progressive music is that it's eclectic. And it does give you the opportunity to be unique, to combine different styles or to be more electronic or more acoustical or float in and out. So I don't think it has the, getting back to your original question, I don't think it has the holistic appeal that it used to, simply because it's not being promoted very much or very well. But, thanks to people like you and the handful of progressive labels that are out there, at least there is something still alive.
Well, thank you very much for all your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been great talking with you, and I'd sure like to try to get some traction. I can't get not even the community radio station here will play my tune, and I couldn't get either newspaper to review it. So I don't know what the reasoning is. They didn't give any reason.
Yeah, for myself, I've just resigned myself to the fact that making music is going to be a cathartic, creative thing for me, and I'll probably have to invest a million times more than I will ever get back from it in terms of money or time or notoriety, recognition. But I can't help doing it anyway.
Yeah, I'm fighting with that question with myself right now. I mean, I have sketches for a lot more stuff, but whether I want to spend the time doing it in order to continue to hit the same brick walls is a story that I'm not sure if I'm willing to put the time into it.
Yeah.
and effort, and still not have it go out there. And in one way, I feel like the Path was a project that I wanted to leave as a legacy. And because everybody, well, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, some people think of me as the classical guitar guy. There's an agent here in town that I know was trying to find a classic rock band to play a gig. He had one group, and then they canceled on him. And I heard about it, and I called the guy, and I said, I'm playing in the Chancellors. It's a really excellent classic rock band. Why don't you have us? Oh, well, you're the classical guitar guy. And to him, that's what I did, and I don't do anything else. And to other people, I'm the guy that plays the medieval lute and all the weird wind instruments and all the weird percussion instruments. And I don't play classical guitar. Well, in one instance, a few years ago, there was an opera, and they needed a guitar player. There were, I think, 4 pieces in the opera that called for guitar. And there's a friend of mine is the usual guitar player for them, but he couldn't do it. So he suggested me, and I said, "Oh no, Joe's a string bass player," because I played string bass in the Philharmonic for several years. And so yeah, but he's got his doctorate in classical guitar, and oh yeah, well no, he's a string bass player. And as it turned out, they hired 2 people before they hired me, and they couldn't read the parts. And finally, a week before the production, they succumbed and had me come do it, and it was really easy. I mean, I just typed the parts; they weren't that hard. In fact, they weren't hard at all. But people just get this idea that they do what you think they do, and that's all. They can't possibly do anything else, and people just get blown away when they hear that like Motley Crue was a country band before they put on the leathers and the spikes, and that the Bee Gees did country music, and they did those really beautiful ballads, in their first decade or so, and they didn't do disco their entire lives. So it's a matter of pigeonholing, and that does make it simpler. But I'm sure that the guy that does the reviews for the local paper here, number one, I'm too old to be doing anything that's fresh, and all I do is Louie. Because that's what he knows me as. He knows that I play in a classic rock band, and we get a fair amount of traction. We play some pretty high conspicuousness shows. When the Drifters come through, or when the Tokens come through, or whatever, we're usually the band that opens opens for all these groups, the Byrds and so on and so forth. Well, there's no Byrds anymore, but there was. We get to play that, and we still rank very high when it comes to best in Boise. We get a lot of votes. We usually wind up either winning or being in the top 3. And he just thinks that that's an abomination, because if you're over 30, you shouldn't be doing rock music anymore.
Well, I think for the people who can afford to pay bands, it makes it really easy to pigeonhole people and just say, okay, I've got this band or this guy in this category, and when I need to pay someone to do that, then I know that I can pay that person, But there are fewer and fewer people who are willing to pay bands and groups of musicians, so I don't know what to make of it, other than I hope you can find your way through and determine what works for you, and that you can be that you can make anything from it in terms of livelihood.
Yeah, I just just like it to get some traction.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting it to be a big national hit or anything like that, but to get some traction and I didn't know he could do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Well, thanks a lot, Anthony. I appreciate chatting with you.